Hi, my name is Mia Wilson, and for my episode of the Happiness Lab, I was assigned the episode Making the Grade. I felt as though the theme of this episode was that grades are counterproductive and that they cause unhappiness. The presenter of this podcast shared her own opinions, as well as talked to other people about how grades cause more anxiety and stress, but actually lead you to learn less. It also talks about how this anxiety causes a lot of physical and mental health issues. Grades cause shallower thought, and also how we are under constant evaluation and grading, not just in a school setting, but also in our everyday social lives. The first grading system was created around 200 years ago by the Yale president Ezra Stiles, and he ranked his students from the lowest performing to the highest performing in a 4.0 grading system, which we obviously are still using even in this class today. And many people, especially in this podcast, do not agree with it. And some of these experiments somewhat show that grades may not cause the best performance. In a 1961 survey by Robert Bostrom, college students were asked to share their opinions in a survey on hot button political issues, and then a week after taking that survey, they were asked to write an essay supporting the idea that they disagreed with. Those essays were then falsely and randomly graded. A third of them were given an a third were given a D, and a third were given no grade. The essays were then given back to the students, and the students were asked to take the original survey again. It was found that the students who were given an A had their opinion majorly swayed, more so than the people who received a D or no grade. And they agreed with the very thing they originally disagreed with. So that acceptance, that positive grade, that affirmation caused them to completely change their mind. In another survey in the 1970s conducted by Susan Harder, sixth graders were given anagrams. They were given three-letter anagrams and six-letter anagrams. And it was found that even though the six-letter anagrams were more challenging, the students smiled twice as much when trying to solve them. Then another group of students were given the same anagrams, but then told that they were going to be graded on them. The students voiced and showed more fear. They performed more poorly, and they also just aimed for the easier three-letter anagrams that they already knew. They aimed lower, and they didn't want to challenge themselves because of that fear and anxiety. That fear and anxiety is a common theme throughout the podcast, and on this slide, I shared some statistics that were shared in the podcast. A woman named Tracy George came on and spoke, and it was a bit ironic because she works in mental health for Yale, and they're the ones who originally created the 4.0 grading system. So they now employ people to help students with mental health and counseling to deal with the grading system that they created. Tracy also talks about how we aren't just evaluated in school, we're also being evaluated on apps and social media. You get positive likes and comments, which give you validation on Instagram, Facebook. There was a woman who spoke earlier in the podcast who talked about how she was addicted to tracking her steps and comparing her steps in the Fitbit to other people who were also tracking their steps. And even though she recognized that it wasn't healthy, she admitted that she still does it. This grading system can incentivize us in the wrong ways. On the podcast, a man named Alfie Kohn spoke, and he was a very staunch opposer of grades. He wishes to abolish the grading system. He has a quote, and he says, "Grades poison everything they touch." He compares grades to dog biscuits on sticks, and that people are intrinsically devalued with extrinsic reward. He talks about an experiment where children who received praise for doing something positive ended up being less generous than their peers because the focus and praise came back on them and their performance. Like we saw with the experiment with the anagrams, Cohn talks about how grades undermine interest and lead students to avoid challenge and just authentically going and learning something because they enjoy it. They try to seek out ways they can get that good grade instead of actually taking the time to learn it and digest it. I think my story is the same as any other college student's story. Grades stress us out, and we just strive for, at least I know I do, strive for success and perfection with my grades. I just want them to be good. And I will say, on a positive note, I'm taking a BOCES class right now for jewelry and lapidary, and that feels like going against the grain in a positive way because it's not a pass or fail class. I'm just paying to use some equipment and have somebody there to teach me and to just actually learn how to do that without worrying about a grade. I feel as though the terms from our textbook that apply to this podcast are reward power and incentives. Reward power reminds me of when Alfie Kohn was talking because he talked about how grades are also used as a means of control to get people to do what they want. And grades are incentives. They're motivations to either do what's perceived as better, or like we saw in the survey slash experiment with the political opinion, they can completely change their mind by that incentive. I think the biggest takeaways are to organically pursue your interests, like I feel as though I'm doing with the BOCES class. Just learn something and enjoy something for the sake of doing it, not for the reward that comes from it. Grades also are not equivalent to education. If you're just striving to get the best grade, you might be taking shortcuts where you'd be much better off and more educated by taking the time that you need to learn and enjoy something. And pursuing success on external rewards can make you unhappy. That can be grades, social media likes, whatever that reward may be. So I think overall, it's just important for us to enjoy and learn things organically and to try not to put so much stress on grades. I wish us all good luck with our grades and thank you for listening.